Good evening, and thank you very much for being here and making time for our panel discussions in this hall. We have with us perhaps the A-list of Indian geopolitical and diplomatic analytical heft. So we're very proud to have Taranjit ji, Kanwal Sibal ji, and Ruchira ji with us. And what a day, Kanwal ji, to be speaking. A day when war is broken out in the Gulf. A day when Israel and America have got together and they have struck Iran. Taranjit ji, just a few days ago we were talking and we were talking about larger equations and things changing this way and that way. But here we have a scenario that has emerged that perhaps some of us were fearing would be very disruptive. So I want to first begin with you, Taranjit ji, and this is something that's important because clearly this is happening now in India's backyard. We have relationships both with Iran and Israel. With Israel, of course, you saw the bonhomie just 2 days ago where the Prime Minister and Benjamin Netanyahu were together. The Prime Minister addressed the Israeli Knesset, and the Prime Minister said that we back Israel, that India backs Israel in the actions it needs to take to defend itself. Perhaps he didn't realize that there was going to be this sort of a consequence. But India will be now, questions will be asked of it, I'm sure, because we've assumed this posture of strategic autonomy. There are many stresses on India now because people expect us to align with this bloc or the other. These are times where, as you know, conflagrations are breaking out and India has emerged as such an important player on the international stage. So can we continue to push this posture and remain, in a sense, equidistant from various powers?
Thank you, Rahul. Thank you for having me, and it's wonderful to be with my former Foreign Secretary and my very good friend, Ruchira here. Rahul, I'll slightly differ on that. I know there is an immediate issue which is at hand, and there is understandable excitement. But international relations between countries have always been complicated and complex. It's a different era. The crisis will be different. So, coming to this part, I would say that, look, strategic autonomy is not a concept in vacuum. It's connected, one, in the environment which you live in, which has regional dimension and it has international dimension. And at some stage we can go into it, I know. Secondly, the capability and the capacity. And that has, again, many dimensions. That has an economic dimension, that has a defense dimension, that will have many other aspects also, again, on which we can go into. So that part also plays a significant role. And finally, if I may say, in both these, we always develop partnerships. And that's where strategic autonomy, it doesn't mean that, look, the non-alignment of Cold War was a different era. Today, things have moved. And every day we see the relationships move. So there are challenges. No doubt, strategic autonomy gives you the flexibility of having relations on specific issues. It doesn't mean that you go in for an alignment with X or Y. And once we go into details, I will certainly get into it.
Okay.
But let me give an opportunity to my
let's open up the floor. Mr. Sibal, Israel wants us to be part of the hexagon, though exact shape and who should be on it has not been enunciated upon by Prime Minister Netanyahu. He definitely has expectations of New Delhi. On the other side, we have deep and entrenched strategic interests in Iran, as you know. And some would say that Iran belongs to a certain other bloc. You could say in the background is China, Russia. We also have ties with China, Russia. How do we now navigate as we go forward with this Gulf War? And there are going to be implications for us, economic implications, there are strategic implications. What do? We keep sort of playing this game where we somehow slither between the two blocks, or do we have to now make up our minds?
No, I think we've made up our mind that we're not going to join any bloc, and this is part of our traditional diplomacy right from the time of our independence. Non-alignment was a product of the Cold War, but the spirit behind non-alignment remains. And since we are targeted always about being non-aligned and to choose sides, therefore the vocabulary has changed. Now, therefore, we talk about multi-alignment or of strategic autonomy. But basically, it's the same thing, that we keep the independence of our, we retain the independence of our foreign policy as much as we can. No country is fully independent, but nevertheless, whatever margin of maneuver we have, we will maintain it and not choose side needlessly and make our strategic interests become a part of the strategic interests of other countries where we actually differ, where our national interests do not demand us to align ourselves. So that is the meaning of the strategic autonomy. And we will continue to maintain that. Now, you said whether we can do this in the context of what is happening, with constant pressure to choose sides and this and that and that.
And it's not just pressure, Mr. Sibal. There will be a winning side in this conflagration if one is to believe what the US says, that we are going to ensure that Iran complies. If need be, we will even put in a regime that's favorable to us. So should we not be on the winning side because we have so many states?
Well, I would ask the question that has the United States succeeded in creating a winning side for itself anywhere in this region? The only country is Israel. But apart from that, it has failed everywhere. It's failed in Iraq, it has failed in Libya, it has failed in Syria, it failed in Afghanistan. In fact, they have destabilized the entire region without actually being able to stabilize the region and promote their interests. And the reason why, and because they're not being able to do that, they have chosen another victim, and this time it is Iran. There's no reason for them to attack Iran. Iran has never committed aggression against the United States. So what is the reason for the United States to commit aggression against Iran? Yes, Iran has been very vocal in terms of Israel and denying their right to existence. I think that was a grave strategic mistake they have committed over the years. Rather than let the Arab countries take up cudgels on behalf of the Palestinians or Arabs, they have, for reasons I can explain, but this is not the platform to do so, they chose to be very aggressive in terms of protecting the Palestinian rights and therefore attracted the ire of Israel and United States and the West in general. But other than that, I can't see what is the casus belli. If, for example, the nuclear issue is the casus belli, United States helped Pakistan become nuclear. Iran has nuclear weapons. North Korea walked out of the NPT. Nothing has been done about it. United States has walked out of all disarmament agreements. They are now saying they're going to test again. Now, that is their own position with regard to nuclear weapons. But when it comes to Iranian nuclear weapons, then it becomes a casus belli. Now, in 2015, when they had the JCPOA, Obama was fully satisfied with the agreement. At that time, I had written, if you see my articles, that Iran has made such compromises with its national sovereignty that no self-respecting country would make. They made it. And then they said, no, they are 1 month away, 2 months away, 3 months away from nuclear weapons. 11 years have passed, and the same narrative. They're 1 month away, they're 2 months away, even when they formally declare that they don't want nuclear weapons and the IAEA is there. You can always say they cheat. But that is just a way of saying things.
So are you saying that Trump is joining Israel to attack Iran because he wants to either deflect attention from his domestic problems, or he wants to showboat and tell the world that America is still great, and this impression that the world is getting that America is sort of receding inwards is wrong. So, I mean, why is this happening then?
I would say that a lot of what he's doing in foreign policy actually is a product of domestic policies. And that is where the problem is. And now that the elections in November are coming up for the House, now there is more concern that if he loses the House, his foreign policy is finished, his domestic policy is finished. And there are the Epstein files. There are a lot of things that are happening inside which actually, and plus, of course, the Israeli lobby and the huge amounts of money that he has got for his own election from the Israeli lobby. That explains why he's doing this.
Ruchira ji, let me bring you into this conversation because, again, I'm going to ask you to explain to the gathering here. At UN, India has tended on certain issues, Ukraine, for example, to abstain. Is there a price? Has this translated, for example, into greater diplomatic leverage? Or have abstentionisms diluted our moral influence? People expect us to take a position to say that, look, you must do this, or we must vote for here, or there should be ceasefires, this, that, the other. Even on this Israel-Gaza issue, we sort of abstained. Is there going to be a cost? Is it an advantage? How do you view this? You've been in the UN system.
No, thank you very much for that question. Let's look at the abstentions and the yes votes of India in the United Nations in recent years. So you're absolutely right. The abstentions have gone up dramatically. About 44% of the times India abstains on UN votes. And the yes votes too have gone down. They are at a historic low. So India is saying yes just half the number of times while the abstention votes are going up. Now, what does it indicate? It indicates a more selective and nuanced approach to global issues within the wider ambit of multi-alignment in a multipolar world. Now, what I want to tell you is that don't imagine even for a minute that it's just India where the abstentions are rising. It is a broad trend with other countries too. It's
Really?
not just India, absolutely. So today, India's vote is more issue-based. It is not bloc-based. It's not an automatic alignment because the world is more messy, it is more complicated. And this is a broader trend with other countries as well. So that is the first thing. The second point is something that you raised in your initial intervention when you talked about India being critiqued for this policy of strategic autonomy. And you also inquired, I think, not explicitly but implicitly, whether the space for India to exercise strategic autonomy has shrunk. Well, let me tell you, of course, as Ambassador Sibal has just said, India is going to exercise its independence in decision-making. Don't expect that to change. That is anchored in our history. That is anchored in our evolution. And it does indeed cut across the board. It cuts across the political spectrum. There is no walking this back.
But ma'am, critics will say that, look, India's approach has been always based on a moral outlook, at least in the past. And I'll pick up that thread with Taranjit ji also. But I want to ask you this, and many people say these abstentions introduce a degree of hedging. India sits on the fence on important moral issues. For example, when Russia went into Ukraine, a lot of countries said that that was a violation of another country's sovereignty. China could do that and invoke the precedent against India tomorrow. We share a border which is unsettled with China. There could be Pakistan tomorrow that might resort to some sort of misadventure. And they do. So how do we square this with our moral?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right to raise this question. I think a lot of people are raising this issue, this difference between the principle of it and the practice of it. Indeed so. But whoever said that strategic autonomy is a risk-free policy, it is a very fine balancing act. You're balancing between the major powers. Let's say you have a resolution at the United Nations. Now, United Nations resolutions are not so simple. There are multiple clauses. There could be the language in a particular clause. There could be language on a particular issue. There could be something to do with the implementation schedule. There could be the prevailing geopolitical environment at the time of the adoption of the resolution. So India calculates all of this very carefully. And I would say to the critics that yes, indeed, India is being critiqued because there seems to be and I stress upon the word seems, there seems to be a dissonance between the principle and the practice of it. But remember that today the world is very different from what it was in the earlier days. Earlier there was bloc-based voting. There was the Soviet bloc, there was the Western bloc, there was the non-aligned bloc. Today, most countries, as I said, are voting according to the specific issue. It's not just India. So yes, you can say that the abstention votes have gone up, for sure. On Ukraine, India has consistently abstained at the United Nations General Assembly. And in the case of Gaza, we have pivoted from abstention to a yes vote to a humanitarian truce and pivoted back again to an abstention. So that is very much there. I would say it's a calibrated ambiguity in a polarized world.
Okay.
One is that when you talk about morality, I would like to understand what is the moral driving force between Western policies all along. I mean, we've been talking of double standards all the time. All the time. They don't practice what they preach. They talk about values, but they don't implement their own values when it comes to their national interests. So the moral angle I totally discard. I don't think we should pay any attention. With regard to the China thing, if there were huge numbers of Chinese living in India, which New Delhi was targeting and committing atrocities and killed 15,000 of them, then the situation would have some parallel with what is happening in the Donbass region. But I think the India-China border situation and the issues behind it are rather different,
Okay. So,
Rahul, just one tiny point, very quickly. You raised your eyebrows. You expressed some surprise when I said that, it's part of a broader trend in the United Nations. But might I give you very quick examples? Brazil has been abstaining. So has Indonesia. So has South Africa. And many other countries. Whenever you have these polarizing resolutions, this is a development post-Ukraine. The polarization has become very sharp across the United Nations, a reflection of the times that we are living in. So whenever you have these polarizing resolutions, more and more countries, you could use the word, are hedging, or more and more countries are abstaining.
okay, well, that's a great point and a data-driven point. So we are not alone. Taranjit ji, I have to ask you this because, you referred to geopolitical implications and you talked about regional implications. Now, let's come back to this subject of the Gulf situation that is unfolding. We have friends in both capitals, as I said, Tehran and Tel Aviv. There's also a political aspect to this because we have Muslims here in India, we have a big Shia population, and there's obviously an expectation among them also that we stand up for their brethren in Iran and so on and so forth. Now, do you believe that this Gulf crisis is going to put pressure, add to the complications that Delhi has to endure? There's a subplot, there's a Gaza-Israel thing going on, now there's a wider Gulf which could obviously engulf, to pun on the word, many more countries. Where do we go with this?
So, Rahul, Ambassador Sibal mentioned about the moral part and putting it out.
No, because the opposition, sir, is asking questions.
Absolutely. Look, he's very right. On the moral part, everybody has an argument. So we will not get anywhere there. And it's only a debating point because at the end of the day, as you rightly said, any government of the day has to face the reality.
That's right.
And it's based on national interest. And national interest is seen by each country according to its own interest. So when you ask me on does this action complicate affairs, certainly. So did the Russian going into Ukraine on fertilizers, on a whole lot of, and we had to navigate that. I think on this particular issue, definitely there are going to be implications for United States, there are going to be implications for Iran, there are going to be implications for Israel, and a whole lot of us. And I think, again, I would say, and it's a general statement, we can definitely go into, there will always be challenges, but it is incumbent on us to convert those into an opportunity.
So on this case of Iran, for example, there's pressure that we withdraw from Chabahar. I think we've given in. The Americans have an expectation. You've been our envoy to the United States as recent as I think about 3 years ago. So you have perhaps the most updated idea of how the American establishment is thinking. You continue, I'm sure, to interlocute with them. So I want to ask you, sir, tomorrow the Americans are sort of dictating terms as to how we should deploy our strategic interest, where we should invest and so on and so forth. If we don't or are not seen to be taking a position that is backing the American intervention, because I'm sure a statement has to come out very soon from the MEA or from New Delhi, there's going to be a repercussion. So I'm saying, should we just throw in a lot with the US on this? And
since you mentioned when I was the ambassador there, I also want to draw your attention. The CATSA waiver came at that time.
Yes,
The S-400 were picked up.
that's true.
And also the oil issue was very much so.
But Biden was more reasonable, people would argue.
Well, I would avoid commenting on that because that's domestic polity.
Yeah.
The reality is, whoever is the president of the United States is not decided by India. You have to tackle whoever the administration is. So that's why I avoided commenting on this. Because look, commentary is the easiest. And especially when you are retired, you can comment on anything. But there is a bigger responsibility of the country. So the leadership is tackling this situation. And I do not certainly agree that somebody can throw tantrum on X or Y. All these issues are looked into in our overall broader interest. So if there is some give here, there's always a take there. And in this particular issue, I'm sure number of factors have gone in. You seem to be more aware than me what has been given in and what has been given out. I think you had Mr. Goyal also yesterday at your forum. But I can tell you one thing that from my experience, that it's the overall package which is important, including for President Trump. And I'm not giving any justification, but if you look at over a period of time, there is a necessity and importance of tackling all these. Now, as you said, for us, Iran has a certain implications, just like for Iran itself. Ultimately, on the ground, the strength of the economy, the strength of the defense, the strength of so many other aspects, including the people's morale,